Imagine, just for a second, trying to regulate the discovery of fire, or trying to draft safety guidelines for the invention of electricity before anyone even has a light bulb. Well, that is exactly the kind of monumental challenge we are facing right now with artificial general intelligence. Welcome back to the TLDR studio, everyone. Today, we're diving into a brand new explainer that I'm absolutely thrilled to share with you. Look, if you're a product manager, a startup founder, or frankly, anyone building in tech today, you know the AI hype is at a total fever pitch. But recently, Demis Hassabis, the CEO of Google DeepMind, and literally one of the most pivotal figures in AI history, dropped this massive, incredibly thoughtful essay called A Framework for Frontier AI and the Dawning of a New Age. We're going to break down his exact framework for how we don't just survive, but actually thrive as we barrel toward AGI. So let's get right into it. I mean, just listen to the sheer weight of this statement from Hassabis. We are standing in the foothills of the singularity. Guys, this is not a sci-fi movie pitch anymore. Hassabis is stating very clearly that AGI, meaning systems that have literally all the cognitive capabilities of the human brain, is likely only a few short years away. Just let that sink in for a minute. We are quite literally watching the dawn of a totally new age for humanity happen in real time. For those of us building digital products day in and day out, it's so easy to just look at AGI as the next logical software update, right? Like first we got the internet, then the smartphone, now AGI. But Hassabis explicitly warns us not to do that. He says comparing AGI to standard tech breakthroughs is a fundamental mistake. It's so much deeper. He compares it to discovering fire. As he puts it, we have essentially figured out how to make sand think. It's miraculous. And treating it like just another app launch is entirely missing the point. To put this into perspective, we have to talk about scale. Hassabis projects that the impact of AGI will be 10 times that of the entire industrial revolution, and it's going to happen at 10 times the speed. We're talking about vastly accelerating drug discovery, unlocking completely new sources of clean energy, and inventing advanced materials out of thin air. He even suggests we could hit a point where physical resources simply aren't the bottleneck for human progress anymore, a true era of abundance. But getting to that utopian finish line? Yeah, that is the tricky part. Section 2. The Frontier AI Dilemma and Navigating the Race. So while those upsides sound absolutely incredible, Hassabis is super clear about the reality on the ground. We are not giving ourselves the breathing room to do this safely. We're locked in this intense, multi-layered geopolitical and commercial race, and our technical capabilities are vastly outpacing our actual understanding of what these systems can do. We're already dealing with cybersecurity headaches. Soon, we could be looking at AI-assisted nuclear and biological threats. And then there's the really wild stuff on the horizon, like how do we control an agentic system that can recursively improve its own code when even the absolute smartest people in the room disagree on what happens next? Hassabis argues that cautious optimism isn't just nice to have, it's the only rational strategy. Section 3. A FINRA for AI and the standards body. Okay, so how do you actually regulate something that is evolving this fast? Well, Hassabis has a concrete proposal. He wants the US to step up and create a new standards body. Think of it kind of like FINRA in the financial world, a public-private partnership with federal oversight. Job number 1 for this group? Defining what a frontier model actually is. And this is clever because the definition won't be static. A model only gets that frontier label if it hits specific threshold benchmarks. And those benchmarks will constantly be updated as AI gets smarter. Now, if you are building massive models and you cross that threshold, congrats, you're now designated a frontier lab. But with that title comes some very heavy responsibilities. You'd be expected to follow an incredibly rigorous set of best practices. We're talking publishing highly detailed technical model cards, locking down your internal cybersecurity to guard the model weights, thoroughly vetting key personnel, and pouring massive resources into safety research. So the days of move fast and break things, yeah, that doesn't fly here. This is about building with absolute institutional responsibility. Section 4. Testing the Frontier and the 30-day window. Let's look at the mechanics of how this regulatory pipeline would actually work for the tech giants. Under Hassabis' framework, before a frontier lab releases a new model to the public, they'd voluntarily hand it over to the standards body for a 30-day pre-release review. Think of it as a month-long stress test. Once everyone is confident the system works, this voluntary window would become a hard rule, meaning you literally cannot deploy a frontier model in the US without passing this check. And the work doesn't stop on launch day. The labs and the regulators would be in constant communication to patch vulnerabilities post-release, just like standard software security, but on steroids. You're probably wondering, what exactly are they doing for those 30 days? Well, they're running some seriously intense evaluations. For cyber and biothreats, they do hardcore scientific audits. For agentic AI, those systems acting on their own, testers are going to actively try to see if the AI is attempting to bypass its guardrails, or, wildly enough, if it's exhibiting signs of deception. And on the output side, they'll verify things like digital watermarks on images and ensure the model generates human-readable tokens. Essentially, they want to make sure we can actually read the AI's train of thought to understand its reasoning. But hey, if you've ever taken a standardized test, you know the flaw here: teaching to the test. If these AI labs know exactly what the benchmarks are, they might just overfit their models to ace the test while hiding other flaws. Hassabis is way ahead of this. At first, the standards body will collaborate with the labs, sure, but very quickly they have to build out independent third-party auditing. They need to create blind tests the labs have never seen. And to keep the labs on their toes, these benchmarks would be deprecated and replaced dynamically, maybe even every single quarter. Section 5. What this means for builders and the startup reality. Okay, this is the so what moment for all of us. If you're a product manager, a founder, or a dev watching this explainer, you might be having a minor panic attack thinking your next big idea is going to get buried in FINRA-style red tape. But here is the massive sigh of relief. Hassabis explicitly carves out a startup exemption. Non-frontier models are completely exempt. If you are not building a billion-parameter behemoth at the absolute bleeding edge of human cognitive ability, none of this heavy regulatory burden applies to you. So what we're looking at is a world with two very distinct tracks. On one side, you have the frontier labs. They face heavy regulation, massive scrutiny, and even potential forced slowdowns if things get too risky. But in exchange, holding that frontier lab badge will carry unparalleled global prestige. On the other side, startups, everyday builders, and academia. You are entirely exempt. You're completely free to innovate, iterate, and build those amazing vertical applications without having your agility crushed by a 30-day federal review bottleneck. Now, you might be asking, why focus on the US market? Hassabis is pretty pragmatic about this. The US simply has the economic and technical leverage right now to actually get this off the ground. But AGI is obviously a technology that changes the entire planet. So this US framework is meant to be a foundational blueprint. The ultimate goal is that a successful rollout here forces the international community to the table, creating a global consensus on how we manage these existential risks while making sure everybody everywhere gets to reap the benefits of AI. Section 6. The unwritten future and what lies beyond the tech. Towards the end of the essay, Hassabis zooms way out, shifting from engineering to pure philosophy. He points out that solving the technical math of AGI, that is literally just step one. Even if we nail the safety protocols perfectly, we are going to run headfirst into some of the biggest societal shifts in human history. How do we design an economy that actually works for everyone in a post-scarcity world? How do we adapt the human condition to this new reality? And his biggest point is that we cannot leave these questions up to just the technologists in Silicon Valley. Designing this next chapter requires input from every single corner of society. And that brings us to the end. I want to leave you with this incredibly provocative question directly from Demis Hassabis. If AGI actually solves all of our physical and material limitations, what will meaning and purpose even be in a post-scarcity world? What do we do when we don't have to do anything? The future is entirely unwritten, but this little window of time we have right now before AGI arrives is closing incredibly fast. What we collectively do in these next few years is going to set the trajectory for the next era of human civilization. I'd absolutely love to hear your thoughts on that massive question down in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep building.